Hey guys, JB here, the Wolf of Wall Street in the Wolf's Den for another awesome episode. And I have a great guest today, really smart guy, written many books, one that you'll probably know more than the others, called 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene. And let me just tell you something. Our conversation spans multiple subjects here, sales, persuasion, politics, entrepreneurship. And I think the common theme that I really want you to focus in on here is the importance of how you are perceived by other people and how you might not realize that the way you're trying to portray yourself to the world is not the way they're seeing you. In other words, the 48 Laws of Power, many of those things are accomplished through unconscious communication and also through the words that we say consciously. I mean, the conscious communication is basically through words, unconscious through tonality and body language. Well, what's very apparent as we start to talk is that in order to really use these laws effectively, you have to be able to muster a very high level of unconscious communication. So again, I'm a big believer that communication in terms of sales, influence, persuasion is not just for salespeople. It's for everybody. So whether you are a salesperson trying to sell a product, a good or service, you could be a lawyer trying to influence a jury, a businessman trying to influence bankers or investors to give you money, or employees to buy into your idea to come to work for you. You could be a mother trying to influence your children to make their bed, do their homework, a teacher trying to sell your students on the value of education. It doesn't matter what line of work you're in, whether it's business or personal, we must learn how to communicate to get our ideas, our thoughts, our hopes, our dreams across to other people in a way that connects with them. So the 48 Laws of Power, very profound stuff. We'll go through that. Just remember as you listen that to really utilize those laws, you must learn how to communicate effectively. And with that, first, a quick word from our sponsors, then we'll be with Robert Greene, the 48 Laws of Power. All right, so I want to tell you guys about one of my favorite parts of every morning, and that's when I have my Athletic Greens. So right now, Athletic Greens is offering a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs for the Wolf Den listeners. You'll basically never have to buy vitamin D again. Simply visit athleticgreens.com/bonus to get started with this limited time offer. Again, simply visit athleticgreens.com/bonus and get your free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs. All right, so Robert, you are a legend. The first thing I said when I saw you, I said I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
And I said I love your book. She said, which one? I said 48 Laws of Power, and I said that's the one that I think that was the start of everything. It's your philosophy, right? So I want to focus on that to start, and then maybe we could shift to maybe the most recent book and discuss that as well. But I guess my first question is, are the 48 Laws of Power things that can be used individually, or do they need to be used collectively? Or is any one law important, makes a difference in your life by itself?
Well, it's basically mostly for individuals. It sort of comes out of a time, and I still think we're living in that time, where I generally believe it's every man and woman for himself, that we live in a really competitive, kind of ruthless environment, where back in the day when my father, he worked his whole life at one job, he was a salesman. That world is gone, where a company was loyal to you and they had your back, and it kind of went both ways.
Absolutely.
That's all gone. It's been totally annihilated. And now we're in a place where you have to basically look after yourself. And I wrote the book because it came out of my years working in Hollywood. I was working in various capacities for directors, and I was trying to be a writer. And I saw a lot of incredibly, manipulative maneuvers by people who appeared to be very benign, very liberal.
Like a Mike Ovitz type of situation?
Yeah, Mike Ovitz, but even like producers and directors, lower level. And things that kind of ended up inspiring the 48 Laws in many ways. And the idea was, I think I started off as a somewhat naive person. I went to college. I was interested in literature and books and things like that. And then I entered the work world, and I worked in New York in journalism and all over the world, and then in Hollywood. And I wasn't prepared for the kind of nastiness, for the kind of
dog eat dog
Machiavellian maneuvers that people have, and it caught me off guard. And so, and nobody talks about this. When you read business books or management books, they always start from the premise that we're basically angelic
creatures,
people,
good people, yeah.
Our better self, our
Ethical.
better natures. Yeah. And a lot of people are, that's a good part of their character, but there are a lot of people who aren't. And just that 5 or 10% who are really devilish and conniving, they're the ones that end up often having the power. There are no books written about it. It's like our dirty little secret. We talk about sex or the most anything, nothing's really any secret anymore, but power, nobody wants to talk about it or discuss it. So I wanted to give a book for people, to answer your question. It's more for you as an individual, kind of a manual to help you basically prevent you from making very stupid mistakes that we've all made. One mistake in your business life can be fatal. It can ruin you. It can cause all kinds. You can be fired. You can create all kinds of emotional trauma that you never get over. So I really wanted to help on an individual level, help you make you more aware, more conscious of the game that's around you, and it is a game.
Would there be one particular law that you would say this is the one you want to start with? This is like the linchpin law of power, and if you don't do this, you're going to find yourself on the ass end of a lot of situations in life.
Well, there are two laws that kind of go together, I'd say. The first one is law number 1, never outshine the master. And you'd be surprised how many people violate this law. And the premise of it is that the person who's above you, and there's always somebody above you, no matter how high you rise, has an ego, right? And you're not aware that even people who are very successful have egos and insecurities. You assume that they're so strong and powerful, they reach this high position, that you can almost, do anything. You don't have to worry about it because they're so strong. But in fact, the higher people rise, the more sensitive and prickly they actually become. They're very worried about whether you respect them enough, etc. They're worried whether, what are people saying behind their back. And the premise behind that is, if you try so hard in the work world to impress the people around you and impress the boss, or I call it the master, never outshine the master above you. It could be a woman, but that's the word we use. You might end up inadvertently triggering their insecurities. They might end up thinking that you are more popular than they are, or they might start worrying that perhaps you're after their job or whatever. And so it's a story that repeats itself endlessly, where you end up becoming fired or isolated in your position, and you're not aware of what happened. Because if a boss, fires you because of this, they're never going to say, "Well, you made me feel insecure." They're going to come up with some rationality. Sure. They're going to say, you did, your performance isn't up to par, whatever it is. It happened to me.
Or set you up to fail in some way.
Exactly.
Right.
It happened to me. I was working on a television show as a researcher, and the percentages of programs that ended up being filmed by me was like 80%, whereas there was like 5 other researchers there. So I was the most successful person there by far, and then I got fired. I was like, what the hell's going on here? Isn't it about performance and results? And I had a good attitude. It was because I was doing too good of a job, and it was making other people kind of feel like, I was too ambitious or something was wrong with me. So that law is very important because I've talked to so many people who've suffered because of that, right? Your boss, the person above you, has insecurities. You have to be aware of that, and you need to feed their ego if you can, and never inadvertently trigger those insecurities. Okay, that's law number 1.
Just before you move on to the second part, I think intuitively, I would think that the solution that you prescribe for this would not be sit and don't do a good job would be learn how to do a good job without shine. There are ways that you could actually still do that same 80%, but do it in a way it doesn't make people around you feel insecure, and certainly does not outshine the master.
That's right.
So that's the solution. Is there actually be more? Let's see, strategic about how you succeed, and maybe giving credit to others.
Perfectly. The person who was great, and I'm sorry his name escapes me, but you'll be able to come up with it. He was the head of Goldman Sachs for many years. He served
Lloyd Blankfein, or before him,
he served in the Clinton administration. Anyway,
was he governor of New Jersey also?
No.
Okay, well, anyway,
yeah. He rose to be
the head of the Treasury. He was Secretary of the Treasury.
Yeah.
Paulson. Hank Paulson?
No, not Hank Paulson. A younger guy, kind of good looking.
Let me think.
It's good.
Okay, we'll come
back to it. We'll look it up. Anyway, he was the master of this. He was brilliant at that kind of game. He was by far the smartest person at Goldman Sachs.
We call those people expert ingratiators, right?
Yeah.
They talk about that in my system of selling, that ingratiating people is a really powerful tactic.
Well, he was so good and rose so quickly, but he knew how to always kind of play it down. He was very good at self-deprecating humor. He always, in a meeting, he always said, "Oh, that's a great idea. Maybe I'll think about it. Maybe we'll put that in." But he never would put it. But he'd always compliment them, but never act upon it.
Sure.
He diffused all of the envy, because envy is a very powerful emotion in the work world. Playing the game, understanding that really in the end he had the power, but by playing people's egos and never making others feel insecure, he kind of secured his position in a world that's full of so
makes sense. Yeah,
I wish I could remember his name.
Meadows, Laws. Anyway, so okay, what's the second part of this now?
Well, the second law seems very obvious, but it's never. I can't even remember. Always say less than necessary. Law number 4. And it's the fact that by talking too much in a meeting or in any kind of situation, you make people inadvertently smell weakness on you. And what I'm trying to say in my book is and I say it in my last book, a lot of communication between humans is nonverbal.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
We feel, we sense something from you, and it communicates, and we have an impression. And people who talk a lot generally give an impression of they don't know how to control themselves. They can't control their
diarrhea of the mouth, so to speak.
Yeah, and whereas people who kind of say a little bit less, who kind of speak in riddles almost, who say, yeah, that's great, I'll think about it, or whatever, gives off an impression of power, as if they know more than they actually do. Mm-hmm. Because the game of power, a lot of it has to do with appearances. And so I studied, for writing the book, some of the most powerful people in history, kings and CEOs and presidents, and inevitably they had that quality where they knew how to control their tongue. The other thing is, if you talk too much, you're going to inevitably say something stupid.
Right. So it's the old saying that, better to be silent than be thought a fool, and to speak and remove all doubt.
Exactly. And it's a very simple law,
But powerful. The most powerful things usually are pretty simple and straightforward.
Yeah.
It's just that people sometimes, because they're so simple, they take them for granted, and they break. The same thing in sales is very, very, very similar. Yeah. So in that case, the idea would be to refrain from just feeling a need to fill conversational vacuums and just to be the person that speaks most. But when you do speak, what you say should be powerful and also a bit, you're saying
cryptic sometimes.
Powerful and cryptic is the right word, yeah.
But just think of it. How many people in the limelight, etc., have said something stupid and they've paid an incredible price for it?
Like Trump?
Trump, well, yeah, almost every day.
No, but it's true though, because in some things, I would say, I liked a lot of the policies, but he would say these things. I'm like, why did you do that? Why create a headshot against you when you could say 9 things right and that one thing overshadows everything else? A perfect example, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. So all you need to do is it's not like you don't talk at all, because that seems weird as well. It's saying less than necessary, but you develop a little inner critic. So as you're talking, you kind of know how to slightly censor yourself in advance. Say, oh no, I shouldn't say that because I know that'll get me in trouble. You're aware of the value people put on words, and that saying something wrong could offend and could cause you a lot of damage. So you develop a little mechanism of censorship that operates very quickly. Oh, I better not say that. Oh, I better say this to impress people or whatever. You learn to control your tongue, control what you say. It's extremely important, but it seems obvious. But so many people violate that law.
What would be an example of a law that you would use, like on a proactive basis? So there's certain things. Let's say, do you look at like certain rules that seem are more like, let's just say that, like for example, the second one's more like a restraint. It's more about restraint than being proactive. Even the first one's almost like it seems like it's from more of a defensive posture than an offensive posture. Are there certain rules that are more offensive rules, that where you're actually going out and doing something in a way that garners you power and projects power? You know what I mean?
Well,
these are like less is more rules. Is there any more is more rules?
Well, there's plenty of those. There's plenty of more offensive rules.
Give me an example of an offensive rule.
Well, the one that everybody always talks about is crush your enemy totally, but we're not going to get into that one right now.
I like that one.
I knew you would. But the other law that actually, believe it or not, Trump was good at, unfortunately, is the power of unpredictability. I forget how the law is phrased. Mm-hmm. It's key. Oh, I know it is. Keep people in suspended terror is the law. So if you're completely predictable and everybody knows what your next move is and they know what you're going to say and what you're going to do, mm-hmm. they start to take you a little bit for granted, and they start, they can kind of foresee what you're going to do next, and they can become defensive.
Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, they can kind of take action. But if they don't know what you're going to do, if suddenly you come out of left field...
The madman theory almost.
Yeah, madman, exactly. Like the brinkmanship idea, like in game theory.
Yeah.
Like you're so insane that you could do anything.
Right.
It gives you a lot of power because people can't predict you.
Very true, by the way.
And predictability is like something that we depend on as human beings. We think we can predict someone's behavior. It gives us a sense of comfort. But the idea that we don't know what someone's going to do is very threatening and very intimidating. But it'll only work if you're in a position of power. Mm-hmm. If you're an employee just starting out and you start being unpredictable, you'll get fired tomorrow.
Sure.
But as a leader... that's something you can do tomorrow, and it's very proactive, and it keeps people on their heels. And you don't have to be as unpredictable as Trump.
I'm pretty good at that, right? I'm unpredictable. Look at my staff. I'm like, never know what he's going to do next. No.
Well, you don't have to do it like every time, every day.
I know.
If you mix it in like once a week, once a month, it's even more powerful.
Well, again, it's almost like there's a yin and a yang when it comes to the exercising of power, in the sense that people, in order to be powerful and have it be sustainable, it needs to be grounded in certainty and stability. Yet it becomes even more powerful if there's a sprinkle of instability.
Exactly.
So it's really about balance and knowing when to apply. But I think the basis is that people want to have stable and predictable leaders, right. But that stability and it becomes even more powerful when you put a bit of unpredictability added to it. Sure, yeah,
precisely.
That makes sense. And what about let's go back to the crush your enemy. Well, I look at crush your enemy as like the one that you would see that goes all the way back to whether it's Game of Thrones or rooting out Rob Roy or back in the Scottish Highlands. I mean, they kill the people, kill their family, kill the kids, kill the male. It's like going back to Pharaoh, kill the firstborn sons, because one day they'll grow up and they'll avenge you, right? So it's got to just crush completely down to where there's no chance of retaliation.
Because if you leave them around,
they'll retaliate.
You've created an enemy that's out to kill you in return, and you're going to, they're not going to stop at anything. And when I wrote that law, the person that came to mind at that point was Saddam Hussein, because there had been the first Desert Storm or whatever they called it in 91, and Bush decided not to go out and get rid of Saddam Hussein.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it seemed like the wise move, and all it did is it created this inveterate enemy who was going to do anything to mess with the United States, and then you had to go back 10 years later and try and get rid of him. The costs that came from that. But the people think, oh, that's such a cruel law, Robert. Why even talk about that? But it's actually the law of business.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's obviously the law of anything else. Look at Facebook. Yeah. Look at Microsoft when Bill Gates was running Microsoft.
Yeah. When I wrote the book,
Rockefeller when he was running,
Rockefeller is the epitome
example,
of it.
Right? Of course.
But
they passed laws to stop the ruthlessness of Rockefeller. Sherman Antitrust is about this very thing.
He was insane.
Yeah.
He was very good at it, though. He was he understood the game, and he went like to the 10th degree to make sure that nobody could begin to compete with him. He was almost ludicrous what he did. But I was thinking when I wrote it as well, Microsoft had Netscape at that point was a big competitor.
Sure.
So what did they do?
They bundled Explorer right in with their core offering and basically drove them out of business.
Completely drove them out of business, and that became the model for Google, for Facebook. Facebook. Look at what they've gobbled up.
Unbelievable.
Right? So that is the operating principle in business. If you keep a rival around and you kind of go halfway to harm them, but you leave them there, they're gonna someday come back and bite you.
Especially in certain industries where there's heavy network effects, where it's where the person that really is the dominant force in an industry creates a self-reinforcing loop here that makes it almost impossible for others to break into the same market. So it's it's exemplified by that in the business world. There are some businesses that really that law just like is on steroids almost,
Yeah, I say particularly in the tech world right now. But
what would you say is a law that would apply to husbands and wives, like a personal interrelationship between people that love each other or hate each other? Which is most marriages, love-hate relationships.
Well, because I wrote my second book, The Art of Seduction, which is kind of the next level of 48 laws. But there are seduction-type laws in the 48. And one of the most main premises of it, there are two laws. One of them is make others come to you. And the second law is use absence to create honor and respect. And the idea is, if you're always going after the other person, if you're always the pursuer, etc., they start to take you for granted, right?
Sure.
You're always the one calling and texting. You're in their face constantly, thinking that that's the way to make them love you. You're also creating that they take you for granted. They think you're so familiar that they have you wrapped around your finger a little bit. And unconsciously, they lose a bit of respect. They may not say it, but it'll come out in their behavior. And over time, the spell of love will kind of diminish. So you want to step back. You want to create some distance, some absence, and you want to make them come to you instead of you going to them. If you make them take a move towards you, then the game is reversed. The dynamic is reversed. And I hate to bring power into these situations, but, it happens. Now the power is a little bit more on your side, right? And so, like Napoleon had this idea. He said, I forget the quote, but it was to the effect of, if I appear every day at the theater in Paris, people don't respect me. Oh, the king is the emperor's there. Okay. But if I only show up at the theater once a month, it becomes an event. And people start talking about me and thinking about me. So use absence sometimes, because we have this wrong impression that presence, being constantly present, is what makes somebody kind of fall in love and want us. But actually, it's a step of absence that creates that. So if in like a love situation, if you don't return the phone call right away or the text, and a day goes by, they start to think about you. They start to wonder about themselves. And in that process of thinking about you, they start fantasizing and wondering. And that's the powerful position that you have if you use absence. So, particularly in the world of social media, people have lost that sense. I mean, it comes down to almost the old phrase of playing hard to get. I mean, that's sort of the obvious way of saying it.
Right.
But we now think that, I just have to tell everybody about myself. I have to tell them what I had for breakfast, what kind of underwear I wear.
It's crazy.
It's like it loses all the magic. You become too familiar.
I think like a perfect example of that is to the utmost extreme is a movie with, who's that movie with they do Kim Jong-un, and they say they don't think he goes to the bathroom. In other words, they don't think you're a mortal, a normal person. And by you going to the theater every single week, it's like you're just like everybody else.
Right.
Versus like, it's that air of mystery and that, you're not so accessible,
That's right.
And so I think like it comes down to like, especially when you're in a position of power and trying to maintain that power, it's almost like you're not ordinary.
That's right.
Ordinary people go to the theater every single day,
Right.
but for whatever reason, whether you're too busy, you have too much other interesting things going on.
Right.
It's almost like the mystery surrounded by scarcity.
Right. Right.
So, give me so when you wrote the 48 Laws of Power, it was a huge hit, right? #1 bestseller, right? Massive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did it change your life in the sense of how you would go out and project your power and how you went out and moved through the world?
Yes, definitely. I have a quote in there by Charles de Gaulle that kind of I always think about. He said that people, when I go out in public, they expect de Gaulle, in quotes, the myth of Charles de Gaulle. They don't want to see the actual person. They want to see the reputation, the myth. And so I realized a little bit that about myself. I didn't come for the book from a position of great power. I had been a middling, struggling, not very successful writer in Hollywood, right? And suddenly I'm thrust into this role where the next year I'm having lunch with the ex-president of Italy, in his palace, and we're talking about Machiavelli and what he should be doing. Berlusconi? No, not Berlusconi.
What is it?
So God, I'm getting it'll come to me.
He was
like the president. He was the president in the 80s. He was the most Machiavellian modern Italian politician.
Sounds like Berlusconi.
It's not Berlusconi. He's number 2. This Andreotti.
Okay.
Andreotti. He was insane.
He was from the Fiat family, wasn't he? Also, or no? Okay.
No, that's somebody else. He was so Machiavellian in the late 70s that people thought that he faked an assassination attempt just to get sympathy, etc. But he was hated and loved. People thought he went a little too far with that. But he wrote a review of the 48 Laws of Power when it first came out, and it was sort of that what brought me over. And I was this kid who wrote this book. And suddenly I was thrust into that world, and I realized I had to project what I wrote about in the book, or people were going to disrespect me a little bit.
Sure.
And then the rapper 50 Cent, who I ended up writing a book with, he loved the 48 Laws. A lot of rappers did. And he invited me over to meet me in New York in a back room of a steakhouse, a Madison Avenue. It's like something out of The Godfather, right? And I was a little bit intimidated because I was by myself and he was 50. And then I realized, I have to kind of project something because he expects to meet this sort of Henry Kissinger type. And I don't look like Henry Kissinger.
Right.
So, I became aware that I had to sort of project or use some of the laws that I wrote about. Because if I'm just myself, people are going to be disappointed in me,
So I'm keenly with it. I'm expected to appear and be a certain way.
Yeah.
As the Wolf of Wall Street, and having Leo DiCaprio play you, it's kind of not an easy act to follow. You know. But I'm aware of that. And I think for me, it comes pretty easy to me that aspect of it.
Yeah.
I think because Leo did a good job of. He was actually playing me as I am.
Yeah, I can see that.
It was pretty close.
Yeah.
But I do certainly consciously make decisions about not making myself too public, going out to every night and being seen too much, and because it almost it takes away a bit from the brand and the mystery for sure.
That's right.
I wouldn't say I would make my life where I didn't enjoy things, but I do consciously, I'm conscious of my brand, let's say, and what it represents, and also because people deserve to get they love the brand and they pay to come see me, so you got to give people what they want, right?
Yeah, but the thing you have to understand is the primary law of human psychology. And the primary law of human psychology is that people judge on appearances. They don't sit there and try and figure out who is the real Jordan Belfort. What is really like behind that mask? Or who's the real Robert Greene? They look at your appearances. They look at your body language, your tone of voice, how you project yourself, what you actually say, the superficial things.
Sure.
And you have to be aware of that, and you have to be able to craft it to some degree. And a lot of people don't like that aspect because I'm saying to be successful in this world, you have to be a bit of an actor.
I teach a system called the straight line, if you know it, and one of the core principles is you have 4 seconds to establish 3 things. Number 1, that you're sharp as a tack. 2, enthusiastic as hell. And 3, an expert in your field, a person of power.
Right.
4, to be reckoned with. And the reason, as I say, is that Your mommy told you not to, and your teachers told you not to judge books by the covers, but they did, and so do everyone judges books by their covers.
Yeah.
It's wired into your reptilian brain. We see people, we size them up, we almost pull them apart and put them back together based on how they're perceived. If you're perceived the right way, sharp, enthusiastic, expert, people will defer to you.
Yeah.
They almost will turn over control of an encounter, of the conversation to you, because we've been taught to defer to experts.
Yeah.
Conversely, if you're perceived as being, dull as dishwater, a disinterested bore, and a novice, well, guess what? Good luck trying to control the flow of a conversation. So it's a critical thing in selling and when it comes to leading other people. So for sure.
And first impressions are extremely critical.
Exactly.
And the thing is, what I wrote about in my last book, The Laws of Human Nature, I have a whole chapter on nonverbal communication. Mm-hmm. And people have estimated that 95% of communication between humans is nonverbal. Mm. We are basically animals, right? And we have a whole nature to ourselves where we judge people, we pick up signals from them. Mm-hmm. And it's not just the obvious things in your face. I mean, the fake smile, the look in your eyes, so you can tell whether someone is sincere or not. But it's also in your tone of voice and your body posture and how you come up to the way your body is tilted when you address someone. Sure. And you not be aware of it, and you may not be aware of it yourself, but you are actually unconsciously 100%. Judging people based on these
every
things.
Second of a conversation. I think also what people don't focus on enough is that they think of that in terms of that when I'm speaking, I need to be controlling how I move my body, my expressions, my tonality. But equally important is how you move your body and your tonality while you listen. While you're listening to someone, ooh, ah, all the oohs, ahs, yup, got it. The way you finish people's sentences, and they can see that, wow, this guy is, because she's sharp, she gets me, they're just like me. That's, I think, where unconscious communication is really usually is underutilized in business, where it's not just what people say, oh yeah, when I talk I gotta sound. No, when you listen, when someone else is talking, that's when you can really get into very tight rapport with someone based on how you very powerful stuff.
I call it the mirror effect. So if you kind of mirror people in their body language or the way you listen to them, it almost is like it almost hypnotizes people. And because we're all narcissists, which is something I talk about once again in my new book, we all have that narcissistic side to ourselves. When another person is reflecting back to us the same kind of looks, the same body language, the same values, the same ideas, it's incredibly seductive. We fall under their spell, right? And the opposite has the opposite effect. So these are things, it's not just, some people don't like this because they say, God, I have to be an actor. I have to be something I'm not. I have to be artificial. But acting is actually kind of an exciting thing to learn. It's like a skill like any other skill, and being able to perform out in public is actually a liberating thing. I
would take a different tack on it. Let me tell you what I think is really even a more profound thing, is that it's not so much that you have to act. People who are poor communicators are tone deaf in their own body language and tonality. See, they actually think they sound good. They think they're projecting the right message because they might be thinking something and the words come out unimpeded.
Sure.
But their body language and tonality doesn't follow suit. So if I say to someone, hey, I want you to really seem like you're interested, and they are interested, they're like they don't realize that they're not portraying what they want. So I don't even think it's about acting.
No, you're right.
I think it's congruency. That those people, their communication platform internally is not wired correctly. So while they think they sound good, I say, okay, do you really like this person? Oh, I love them. We call it resting bitch face, basically. Oh, I really like this person. Then what's that look like? What do you mean? They don't realize that their unconscious communication is not what they are trying to portray. So I wouldn't even say it's acting. It's about learning how to be maximally authentic in your own communication.
It's true. It's true, because if you're too fake, if you're trying to put something on that you're not, people will smell that as well. It'll look like you are trying too hard. So there has to be definitely a natural side to this.
The point that someone says, someone like, okay, I want you to sound sincere. and they are sincere. Like, it's about something and they just don't sound sincere. So it's like acting, but not acting to disempower or to lie. Right. It's acting to be authentic. I think that's the best way. It's the highest level.
That's very profound. That's exactly what the point that I have in my book, The Art of Seduction, where the art of seduction, the very art of it itself, is that you have natural qualities that are seductive, and I give the different types of people, types that you might fit into archetypes. Mm-hmm. You have a quality that's naturally seductive, but you're not aware of it, and you don't know how to bring it out. Exactly. More. And you need to be able to accentuate it and be aware of it.
Yes, that's I think the highest level, and I think that would when I do that, I teach that with selling, because some people are uncomfortable. Like, well, isn't it manipulative? I'm like, no, it's not. I'm not telling you to do something you don't actually feel. I'm showing you how to express what you actually feel and want to feel, because you think you sound good, but you don't. You actually sound. It's like being tone deaf. You sound, I sang great. No, you don't. Only you think you sing great. You sound terrible.
Right.
So I think it's a good way. Let me ask you another question. Sure. Why 48? I'm sure I'm not the only person that's asked you this question, but why is it like you say, I think that's a really good number because people will like that it sounds good in the title, or did you run out at 48?
Well, do you want the truth. Or do you want the...
I'll take both answers.
Well, the fake answer is it's just a great number, and that's what we decided upon. I thought that was a powerful number. But the true story, you want the true story?
Yeah.
Well, the true story was I started out when I was researching it with like 70 laws, and then I slowly whittled them down.
They collapsed into each other somewhat.
Yeah, or this wasn't big enough. And I ended up with 52. And the publisher said, Robert, 52 I don't think is a good number. It sounds like it's too much like the weeks of a year, like you were trying to do that. It doesn't, the 52 laws of power. They said, let's make it 48. And the lesson for me in this was...
I think it's right, by the way.
Oh, they were right. The lesson for me was, I didn't like to hear that. I just write the book that I meant to write. But then I go, you're right, So I was able to drop my own ego, and it took me a couple weeks to realize that somebody else was right about this book that I'd worked so hard on. So I agreed to it. But what I did was I got my own way in the end. I took those 4 extra laws and I compressed them into other laws and made these sort of laws that have 2 sides to them.
Exactly, you collapse them, right? Yeah, and I think that's happens a lot when you make lists and you try to. And I do it all the time, the 7 steps to this, the 9 things to that. When I'm trying to do a list, and someone will say, I know that there are certain numbers that resonate better with people, so I got to collapse laws into other laws, right?
Yeah.
The 147 laws of power, at a certain point it becomes counterproductive, right?
Yeah, some numbers like 11 isn't very powerful, but 12 or 13 kind of works. 13 works.
12 I think would be the better one. That 12 laws of 12. I don't know. I guess... I'm sure there's studies on this stuff.
There certainly are.
Where people, have figured out this is the exact, 1997, versus saying it's, $20, right? And
right.
It actually does make a difference.
1999, yeah.
All right, so I want to tell you guys about one of my favorite parts of every morning, and that's when I have my Athletic Greens. Listen, Athletic Greens is my absolute favorite nutritional supplement. Gives me an extra boost for the day. If you know anything about me, then you know that personal performance is a very high priority for me. 1 scoop of Athletic Greens, I get that feeling, that tingling sensation when your brain and your body are really firing off together perfectly. And that's when I know I'm ready to go out and close at the highest level possible as a salesperson, as an entrepreneur, as a businessman. Make sense? So whether you're training for a marathon, you're trying to lose a few pounds, or you want to elevate your energy and your focus, Athletic Greens is for you. And if your results are anything like mine, I can virtually guarantee you'll have that extra edge in performance that sets you apart. And here's the deal. Right now, Athletic Greens is offering a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs for the Wolf Den listeners. You'll basically never have to buy vitamin D again. Simply visit athleticgreens.com/bonus to get started with this limited time offer. Again, simply visit athleticgreens.com/bonus and get your free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs. When you finished the first book, first of all, how long did it take you to write it?
Well, I was young and eager and desperate. So it took me only 2 years, which in retrospect seems absolutely insane because now I could never pull that off. All the research that I had to do and creating a book from scratch, a whole style and everything.
Yeah.
But it took me 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote my books myself as well, and I didn't know how to write. So it was a hell of a challenge.
It was good, really great books.
Oh, thank you. And I modeled Tom Wolfe and Hunter S. Thompson. I used them. I read their books and
Like the
figured out
Bonfire of Vanities.
Yeah, I used Bonfire as my Bible to
Great
teach
book.
myself to write.
That's a great way of doing
and
things.
I was wow. I was like, what a voice. I was like, this is so great. And that was really what helped me write that book. At least in the beginning, it really gave me, I wanted to sound this way. And I really respected the way he was able to describe people, locations, and
it's a great book.
He's a great writer, Tom Wolfe.
Sure is.
And also Hunter S. Thompson is another one I love as well.
Yeah.
Who was your mentor when you were? Do you have a mentor, like a book, someone that you were trying to model when you were writing, or no? It was just all internal.
Well, it's going to sound pretentious, but I really loved Machiavelli himself. I liked the kind of brutality of his tone. He was talking about power, and he described it in a way that was so brutally frank and honest that it just was powerful. The style was powerful. He used a lot of imperatives, do this, don't do that. And he used strong languages and short sentences, very direct. He addressed the reader.
Yeah.
You could hear his voice in your head.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to sound like I came from the 16th century, but I liked the overall feel of Machiavelli, and that's sort of who I modeled myself on.
Do you think things change? Like, do you think the 48 laws of power would have applied 2,000 years ago, and will they apply in 1,000 years from now?
Well, my ambition, my pretension was that yes, that they would, because I looked at stories from the Bible, from ancient Greece, from ancient China. I want not only just time, but culturally. That it's not just a book for people in the West, because I did take a lot of stories and ideas from Chinese strategists, etc.
Yeah.
So I believe that there is a universal quality to that. But things change in the world, The internet wasn't what it was in 1998 that it is now. I think there's certain underlying principles that are never going to change. And that was the subject of my last book, The Laws of Human Nature. Here are these laws, these things that are embedded in who we are, how we're wired, how we evolved from primates 100,000 years before we even had language. They're there, and they're going to be there forever. And, things change on the surface. We don't wear togas anymore, or we're not cavemen, but underneath it, we remain the same. So just to give you an example, one of the chapters in Laws of Human Nature, and it's very prominent in the 48 Laws, has to do with envy, that we are animals that naturally feel envy. We're continually comparing ourselves to other people, right? If you thought about it in the course of a day, 90% of your thoughts are, am I getting as much money as this person? Are they having a better life than me? How come their kids are doing better, et cetera, et cetera? And it's how our brains are wired. It was a tremendous problem in early primitive cultures, the sense of envy, and they created all kinds of rules and taboos to make sure that nobody got too powerful and that envy wasn't a problem within a tribe. And now here you look, 5,000 years later, and
it's all about envy and artificially pumping yourself up on social media.
Here we are in these modern garbs and with our incredible sophistication, and it's only gotten worse because of social media. And so social media wasn't there 5,000 years ago. The tendency was there 1,000 years ago. And technology only helps bring out these traits even more deeply.
Yeah, very interesting. What do you see the future of, given your purview from the things that you know really so well? What do you see social media taking the country? To me, it seems like it's divided us terribly and also made people feel less secure. And I think there are some obviously great things. You can communicate with the people that you love, but I think it's taken this left turn at Albuquerque, and it's almost like just the most evil thing in the world. That seems like inherently evil at this point. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it like anything, everything in the world is a tool. It depends on how we use it. So power is a tool that can be used for something very good, or it can be used for something very evil, right? And so the same thing with technology. So when it first started, social media was like fantastic. I remember back in the early days where I could, before the algorithms got too out of control, like on Amazon, you could search a book and then other people would have lists of books that were similar to that one, and they were fantastic for like, and then you could network with them, etc.
But that's gone now.
It's all gone. They got rid of all that stuff because it's all about the money aspect.
How much more they can sell you.
Yeah. But the idea of this incredible opportunity to communicate to people all around the world was really intoxicating, and it was wonderful, to be honest. But then it got out of hand because of human nature, because we don't know how to control things, because things tend to go too far. And it's like, are we in control of technology, or is technology in control of us? And I keep using the metaphor in all of my books of the rider and the horse. When I was a kid, I did a lot of horseback riding, and it's always sort of stuck with me. And so when you get on a horse, it's an incredibly powerful animal. It can kill you in an instant if you're not careful, right? And you have to learn how to control it.
Right.
But if you control it too much, if you're too nervous and you're trying to not make it go here or there, the animal won't respond, and you make the animal nervous, and then all kinds of bad things happen. You have to learn this art of being in control, but not taking too much control and letting it and using its sort of animal energy. So are you the person that is able to guide and use these powerful things like a horse, or are they riding you? Are they taking you for a ride? So it's very simple. Are you able to use your Instagram account and check it when you want to, when it's really important for you to do that, like once a day? Or are you constantly having to look at it like 12, 15, 20 times a day and post something every single day, which isn't natural and isn't healthy? So it's controlling you. You have become addicted. You have become a slave of technology. So it's a matter of you as an individual. Are you enslaved to this thing, or are you the master of it? Can you use it for your purposes, or is it using you to sell things and to manipulate you? And it depends on, it's not something that can, there's no magic pill, red pill that's going to open people's minds and change them. It has to come from within. And believe me, I have the same problem. It's hard to discipline myself because I want to check that thing every 5 minutes. But you have to learn this.
Where do you think, from the perspective of the 48 Laws of Power, Donald Trump went wrong? And what did he do right? Like, what was right, what was wrong?
He is the absolute master of anybody throughout history of one law. I can't even begin to say there's nobody who can compare to him. The one law is court attention at all cost. It was the law that was inspired by P.T. Barnum. That was the icon of it was. And P.T. Barnum said, there's no such thing as bad publicity, right? If the worst thing in life is that people ignore you, that they're not talking about you. So even if they're talking about it and they hate you, it's fine because they're talking about you. So I remember I was traveling around the world before COVID, before I had my stroke in like 2016, 2017, all around the world. Everybody was talking about Donald Trump. You go to like Singapore, you go out in some village in Europe somewhere, way out in nowhere, and people were obsessed with Donald Trump. The amount of oxygen and media attention this guy sucked up is insane. And he was a master. He is a master at it.
What was this? Is there something, can you dig deeper, that what he was doing to be a master?
He was always creating controversy. He knew that if people weren't, the worst feeling for him, and he wasn't in control of it, which is the bad part, but if people weren't talking about him, he had this kind of empty feeling, right? So he knew at certain moments he had to say something so outrageous and so shamefaced and bold that the people on the left would go, oh my God, can you believe it? And the people in his base would go, wow, he got away with saying that. But he had to push the button every couple of weeks. He couldn't let that go down. And he know if people were talking about somebody else, like Biden or whomever, he purposely disrupted that train of thought by saying something ridiculous. I mean, examples don't come readily to mind. We all lived through it, so we know that.
Yeah.
He was absolutely brilliant at it. But Donald Trump is not in control of himself. He's brilliant at that, but he is the worst strategist of any leader I have ever witnessed in my life. And I've written books on strategy. My third book's The 33 Strategies of War, right? It's something that I pride myself on, and I do a lot of consulting.
Give me an example of the fundamental errors that he makes as a leader.
Well, he doesn't think 2 moves in advance, right? He's not able to play the long game. So, a classic example was, see if I can get it right, but it was dealing with North Korea and China, and he was trying to, I don't know if I can remember it straight. The idea is basically, if your goal in the end is to kind of control Kim Jong-un, right, and make a deal with him of some sort, you're going to need China to help you, right? And so, but if you signal to China that you're desperate for their help, they're going to feel like they have all of the power and they're going to control the dynamic. And so he set it up so that it has something to do with, he broke that trade agreement with those other countries in Asia. I forget the name of it, with Japan and Korea, etc. There was a trade agreement, right? That was supposed to serve as a counterpoise to China, right? But by breaking up that agreement, he lost all leverage with China, because now China felt like, wow, we can get away with anything now, right? And so he doesn't understand leverage. He doesn't know how to play several moves in advance. So if you alienate, mostly in the world in foreign affairs, if you alienate all the countries in Europe by your kind of insulting the leaders, etc., and there arrives a moment where you need their help, you need their unity, for example, on Iran, if he wants to get them to sign on board with a deal, to break up Obama's deal, he needs allies. But he'd so alienated so many different people, he's incapable of thinking on that chessboard, if I move the queen here, sure, I'm going to lose. No, I better wait and move it here instead.
I think what you're saying is, like, he had this sort of myopic America first sort of idea that America first is a good philosophy, but America first might mean being a bit more strategic by sometimes sacrificing what might seem to be a worse deal for America in the short term, but it would allow you to accomplish something else in the longer term. Is that what you're saying, basically?
Very much so. And the other thing is, he's always trying to be aggressive and always trying to push himself forward and take the maneuver that's going to get the most attention, etc. But it's not often the wisest move. Sometimes you want to step back. Sometimes you want to not signal to the world exactly what you're going to do. He would always foreshadow exactly what his next move was, as opposed to that unpredictability that he knows how to use sometimes.
Do you think there's a better version of Donald Trump out there that someone else is going to come along and tap into?
Well, that would be scary. But if there was a Donald Trump who understood strategy, if I was able to help him, or the other people who are better than I am, that would be scary, because somebody like that could get much more power. Imagine Donald Trump at the beginning of his term, if he said, all right, I have my base, they love me, but I'm going to try and appeal to some people in the center, right? I'm going to pretend that I'm this very patriotic American, and I want to unite this country to some degree. And I'm going to take policies. I can always get my base back with me, right? But I'm going to take a few steps in the very beginning of my presidency that are going to win over some of those people in the center who may not have them. He would have been absolutely unstoppable, right? Because he had all the ingredients working for him. He arrived at a moment where people were tired of politicians, where they wanted somebody from the outside, but he doesn't know how to widen his base. One of the laws of power is called work on the hearts and minds of other people. And the idea is power is a numbers game. You need as many allies as possible, right? You can't just simply survive on a narrowing base. It's eventually going to come back and bite you. You need to expand your base. You need to expand your audience. You need to be, appealing to more people. Your product has to sell to wider and wider and wider. He doesn't understand that. He's always shrinking it, getting it down to the hardest core.
See, I think this what you're saying is true, but there was also, I don't know if the press was so all over. It was it's really unfortunate in the sense that I think that there. I don't know if there's anything he could have done that would have had the press. Maybe he brought it on himself, but it seemed like they were just out to get him from the beginning.
No, I don't agree. I'm sorry, but he could have diffused that right away. It came to him. He was like that when he ran for office. He was a polarizer. Fine, it brought him to power. But people are very forgiving. In the American public, we're very forgiving. We don't have long attention spans. And yes, he would have never won over the people at MSNBC, okay, et cetera. I understand.
Right.
But if
he'd come, the center.
If he'd come out and softened it a little bit, been a little bit more seductive, a little more of the soft sell, bring in a bit. And he had some of that with the working class. He talked on and on about infrastructure. If he had emphasized, instead of the wall and that kind of divisive thing, if he'd said, what we're going to focus our attention of, and I know Peter Thiel, he's somebody I've had lunch with, etc. That was his, because he supported Trump.
Right.
Was focus on infrastructure. The country is falling apart. Put your money and your attention to saying, we're going to rebuild America. We're going to make this the country that builds things. We're going to really bring back jobs. Right? We're going to repair all the bridges and roads in this country. We're going to put money and we're going to invest in that. There would have been people who would have never warmed up to him, but man, it would have won over a lot more than he did. He just didn't know how to play that game.
I think also sometimes he just had this way of saying things that any other politician could have said, but when he said it, there's something about the way he would frame things. Like you could almost, like Obama would say it, and the best is Clinton ever was the best at this. Like, because Clinton could say almost anything in his own way, and it somehow he was like just made you feel okay about it. There's something about Trump where I would say it's almost like the unfunny comic. Like he'll say something that wasn't really that bad, but the way he says it is something about how he frames things and communicates that really pisses people off.
It pisses me off.
It just really pisses people. And you know what? And I'm about as socially liberal as you can get, and I'm fiscally conservative. That's me. It's like many people are like that. And I was like, why you do, like, why? Like, why? Like, stop. Like, you know, and because when you like certain policies and then you see that, it was almost like self-destructive.
Well, it comes from his character, and that's, I'm sorry I keep repeating my last book, but I had a chapter on narcissism, right?
Let's talk about that. That book was Strategy, right? You said?
The Laws of Human Nature.
The Laws of Human Nature.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had the second chapter is about narcissism, and the idea is that we're all narcissists. It's our nature. We all have degrees of self-absorption.
Nothing terrible about being a narcissist. There's healthy and unhealthy levels.
There are healthy narcissists out there. People who are high-achieving executives or artists are generally narcissists, but they put their narcissism into their work, into producing things as opposed to hurting people and as opposed to just getting attention, right? But the other thing in that book is character. It kind of determines who you are. Right? And we all come with a character that's set from our early childhood, from our parents, from our genetics, etc. And if we don't know how to control that, if we're not masters of these things in ourselves that are very deeply ingrained in who we are and give us patterns of behavior, then we can't control what happens to us. We can't control our circumstances. And he is a slave to his narcissism. He needs constant attention. He needs to rile people up. But what comes with that is he's not aware of how other people are reacting, how other people are feeling. You were talking about people who think that they're saying something and it has this effect, but it doesn't. He's like that. He thinks he's having this effect, and for his base it worked, but for 67% or 60% of the American public, it has the opposite effect on them. The other thing is he doesn't have any self-deprecating humor. He has no kind of distance from himself where he can step back and he make a joke at his own expense, which is a very, very powerful quality, very important quality for people to possess in this world. And we like it in leaders, right? We like the fact that you're so strong and secure.
That you could say how imperfect you are, and yet it's still okay, right?
Yeah. And he can't do that because he's so insecure and so needs that narcissistic supply that he always has to do the immediate thing. He's also a creature of immediacy. He's never learned to discipline or master himself. It makes me wonder how he ever got ahead in business.
Let me ask you a question, though. So I look at Joe Biden as an absolutely toxic, terrible human being. Like, I know Joe when he was a liar, a plagiarist. I mean, you know, Joe Biden, like everything he says basically out of his mouth is a lie. Like, if you could look back, I mean, I grew up, he was thrown out of, how old, you were probably the same age. Do you don't remember when he had to get out of the presidential election because he caught plagiarizing a speech and saying,
Neil Kinnock's speech.
Yeah, say he's like really a very dishonest person. Joe Biden said things about lying about his position in law school, number of degrees he has, and really serious lies. I know all politicians, but like things that I would say, why would you lie about these things? Like, doesn't that bother you as well?
No, I mean, Joe Biden isn't perfect. I voted for him, and I do actually genuinely think he's the right person for this moment. I don't have this animus towards him that maybe perhaps you might have.
Well, mine's an animus. I think he's senile or borderline senile at this point.
I don't think so.
Oh, that's just an opinion. But the point is, I remember him when I was younger. And I remember
him too.
I remember the whole thing was like they're saying that he was like humiliated. Which rate was that? 1980? Which
it was in the late 80s.
Right? He was. I remember I was like the whole thing, and they're like, it was pretty bad.
It was like 88.
It was pretty bad, like what had happened. It wasn't. It was like three things at once. It was the speech, the Kinnock speech. It was the issue about saying that he was the top of his class at law school and saying that he got a scholarship when he actually didn't get a scholarship. It was the bottom of his law school class. And those were things that just, to me and to everyone else back then, it was like, this guy's done forever.
Okay. I mean, that might be the case, but he's I don't know. He's a decent human being, I think. And the other thing that people judge him on is he had a terrible stutter, right? He was a stutterer as a child, very severe case. And he still, when he talks, that's why he doesn't seem like completely in command of himself. Or he might seem like he's...
Well, he did when he was 10 years younger. If you go look at Joe speak 15, 20 years ago, he seemed perfectly in command of himself.
No, that's not true. I would say he was
a pretty good orator, in fact.
I don't think he's senile. I mean, I think, I know I'm losing my marbles and I'm in my early 60s. I'm 61, right? Yeah. I don't remember things so well. So it's what happens to you, right? So I understand that. But, Trump had many more things that were like,
I'm not saying you voted for. I'm not trying to say you voted for the right or wrong person.
No.
What
but
I'm trying to say is
he
that
has signs of.
I guess what I'm saying here is more about. I always feel like the worst people are always the candidates for president. There's never someone that I really respect as a candidate for president. The last time I say I really respected a candidate was probably Bill Clinton. Yeah. And I didn't vote for him, but I respected the hell out of the guy.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I think politics is such a dirty, disgusting business where they dig so deep into everything you did. The best people simply shy away. That's, I think, is a fundamental problem in our country.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, if you look in history, which I read a lot of, and you look at some of our prior presidents, a Lincoln, an FDR, a Kennedy, kind of my own icons that I really looked up to. For some people, it might be Reagan. I'm more on the left, but those three.
I loved Reagan, but I mean, I was too young. It didn't matter left or right to me then. I loved him because I felt the country did great under Reagan in the sense there was a national pride. Also, I remember that. With Carter, it was a disaster.
Carter was a disaster.
It was a disaster. I remember interest rates. I just remember I was like young. My parents were struggling. I remember that. Yeah.
But I mean, when you look at people like a Lincoln or FDR or Kennedy, you have the sense that the politicians now are kind of these diminished figures.
Exactly.
They don't have that sort of stature.
Yeah.
Or like of a Charles de Gaulle.
This is my point.
These people who have this incredible presence, this sort of self-command, this sort of knowledge of history and of strategy.
Exactly.
They're in control. You have a feeling that we're like getting smaller and smaller, like we're turning into Lilliputians.
Exactly my point. I feel it's like this is the best that we have on all sides. So I wasn't even saying that with Biden like that. Wasn't meaning it like you voted for the right. I'm saying, is this?
I hear you,
Robert. Thanks so much. You're awesome.
Thank you, Jordan.
Everybody, Robert Greene, 48 Laws of Power, and many other books. Check his. What's the best way for them to find out more about you? A website or?
Yeah, I have my original website for my first 3 books. It's called Power, Seduction, and War.com. The and is spelled out. Power, Seduction, and War.com. And there you'll find links to my first 3 books, to the book I did with 50 Cent called The 50th Law, to my book Mastery, and to The Laws of Human Nature.
Love it. Robert Greene, everyone, thanks for coming and attending today virtually and listening, and I will speak to you again tomorrow. Take care. All right, this next section here is about business and making lots of money. Here's the deal. I'm having a small group of people over to my home in Los Angeles, and the question all of them are asking is, what's next in life. You know, these are people who had massive success already, and they're looking to see what's that one thing, that one distinction that will take them to the next level of money and success. So maybe getting close right now to that 7 figures a year. Maybe you're trying to get to 8 figures a year. The point is that this is an opportunity for you right now to come to my house in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles here, right? And join with 9 other people, all of them ultra high achievers, to attend my mastermind event, which is led by me. Now, what's going to happen here is very special, and it's going to be nothing short of life-changing. You and this group of top business leaders are going to spend the weekend with me in intense, regimented brainstorming sessions, where you're also going to get to have some time, about an hour or more, with one-on-one consulting with me personally, along with a special breakout session where I'm going to be sharing the most cutting-edge secrets of sales, marketing strategy, things I'm using myself right now to scale my own businesses in a massive way. But the real magic, by the way, of this mastermind is you're also going to get to sit in the hot seat in front of all these other top performers. In other words, every person in the mastermind is going to have that opportunity for an hour or more to sit in the hot seat, where all the collective energy, brain power, and experience will be laser guided on you, focused on you and your company, and helping you take things to the next level. Things that you thought were impossible before this day will start to become very possible for you as soon as you leave. When this is over, you're going to go home feeling energized, with new ideas, new plans, and most importantly, a network of very powerful new contacts who are going to help you make them happen fast. In other words, I'm opening up my entire Rolodex to you, as all the people who are attending to do the same. I'm telling you, the results that you're going to get here from this mastermind will be nothing short of staggering. Now, a little bit about how this actually works. First, you're going to fly into Los Angeles, and my driver, Abdul, will pick you up at the airport. We'll have your favorite drinks waiting for you at my house. We'll also have a world-class chef there to cater some of the best meals you've ever had. This is going to be fun, and it's going to be about learning and business and camaraderie, all the best things in life wrapped up into one. I guarantee you will walk out of this mastermind event with a new, improved, much bolder and more powerful vision for your future, a new plan, and massively powerful new context to take your life and your business to the next level. So what you need to do right now is go to jordanbelfort.com/mastermind and apply. That's jordanbelfort.com/mastermind and apply right now. Do not miss this opportunity. It's once in a lifetime, and it's life-changing. All right, real quick, listen, if you're a CEO, you're a sales manager, or you're involved in hiring for your company, I want you to check out my new organization, Straight Line Hiring. What we do is we deliver expertly trained salespeople to companies like yours. World-class salespeople trained by me and delivered to you on demand. Go to my website, jordanbelfort.com. Check out Straight Line Hiring, the only way to grow your company with certainty.